You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't. Hi, Chad Franson here, one of the hosts of Share Your Voice, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, delivering tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. Not only is Michele Katz a mother of four, she is a seasoned IP lawyer and an international podcaster. She's also founder of a philanthropic foundation called Plus One, whose mission is to reduce to zero the number of children without a permanent loving home. You can find out more about it at plusoneadoption.org. That's plusoneadoption.org or at plusoneadoption on Instagram. Hey, Michele, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here. I'm doing very well, thanks.
Hey, I look forward to talking with you about all things associated with law. But first, why don't we get into your philanthropic foundation a little bit? Tell me what it's all about and why it's important to you and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we, like you mentioned, my husband and I have 4 kids. 2 of them are adopted from Colombia. And that's our girls kind of bookended, the eldest and the youngest. And then I carried the 2 boys in between there. And we always had an affinity for adoption as a way to add to our family. And we had very interesting experiences that I have shared with other adoptive families. Everyone, like anyone's family building experience, is unique. And so is ours. So we adopted our first child, got a call. She was an infant. And we hopped on a plane and headed to Colombia for the first time. Now, of course, we've been many times, and we have friends who live there, kind of our daughter's fake aunts and uncles, so to speak. And many of those people, they're from the IP community because they were so supportive when we were there adopting during a strike. And so I was there for 9 weeks with my first time being a mother. And it was different. Let's just say, I didn't have a lot of kid experience prior to that. It was the first grandchild on both sides of the family. And when I was on that plane, I was reading the first 12 months for dummies. Our daughter was 4 months at the time. Then fast forward, after having successful pregnancies and having my 2 boys, we adopted again. But this time she was 8 years old. And this was, if you could imagine, 2019, December, before the pandemic. We were so thankful to get the word that this child had been matched with us, and we flew down as a family. We were a family of 5 at the time. So we all flew down for winter break and made it back home with our 8-year-old daughter and our 4th and last child. And it was just such a beautiful, different experience than the first, but such a beautiful experience. And then during the pandemic, I was thinking, there's this gap between people who want to become parents. There's certainly enough of us out there who want to become parents, far more than those that need permanent homes. So if we could kind of help by providing information to educate, to create more awareness to those people who want to become parents, to consider adoption as a way to build your family. So they birthed the philanthropic foundation, the Plus One Adoption Foundation, in 2021.
Great. Wow, that's a great story. So just out of curiosity, was there I'm sure that adopting a newborn basically from Colombia was a tremendous experience, one that was different than anything you'd experienced. But adopting somebody who's already kind of, maybe got a personality and got their own, got everything that they're used to. How was that?
So luckily, we do speak Spanish already, and we do speak Spanish in the home. So that made the transition a lot easier, I think, than if we hadn't. But yes, absolutely. She had her own personality, yet still to be developed, only 8 years old, but a lot of new experiences for her we were able to see firsthand. When we arrived home on December 31st of 2019, and we live in the city of Chicago, had to walk up the stairs to get to our front door. We had just had a light snow. And so she was touching snow for the first time, and she was trying new foods for the first time. English is still all around us being, she didn't speak any English except for one word, which was yellow, because that was her favorite color at the time. Of course, now it's moved on several times to other colors. And she became fluent within several months, I would say. Summer of 2020, we did enroll her in, there was a camp even during COVID. We were able to get her in camp. And that is what really was like a switch for her. But yeah, very different experience. On one hand, you don't have the all-nighters, with feedings and diaper changes and that sort of thing, but you have other things. You're really trying to work on the relationships, not just between parent and child, but also between siblings. And we have 2 dogs too.
Okay. Yeah. Very exciting. Well, thanks so much for sharing about that. I didn't tell you we were going to talk about that, but I appreciate hearing about it, and that's great. Hey, so let's talk about your law practice. Advitam IP Attorneys at Law. Tell me about a little bit more about that, and kind of what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, so my partner and I started Advitam IP, which means intellectual property for life in Latin, back in 2012. We have now been, 11 years old. And it was a fantastic transition from where we were before, which was a very large general practice in multiple cities. I would say Chicago was the pulse of the IP work that was going on within the firm. But we were, the two of us we were 2 out of 250 partners, 650 lawyers. And we thought, let's try something different. We both had entrepreneurial spirits. And let's try this. And it's been a real success. We have emulated, I think, from where we originally came from, where we grew up as lawyers, which was Welsh and Katz, which was a boutique firm, well known at the time. It was started in the early 80s, 1983, by my father, was one of the partners, Sid Katz, and it had a real family feel, even though it was a corporation. People were pretty much lifers there. And then we eventually merged into that bigger practice many years later, and I was a partner under both firms. So I had the benefit of both types of practices and was able to kind of, learn from both and take the best from both of those worlds and apply it to our current firm.
What would you say? Are there a few things that you would say kind of separates Advitam from other IP firms? Maybe something you're proud of, or something you're just confident that makes you guys different?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that definitely distinguish us from other firms. People complain a lot about lawyers, about how we bill. And I feel like by using flat rates, which has been a part of our practice since the very beginning, I actually, even in my prior firms, kind of rigged the accounting system in order to be able to flat rate bill, because people want to know what they are going to spend in advance. And because we did a lot of international work prior, we still do, but as I was growing up in Welsh and Katz, for example, we were encouraged to attend conferences, and they would be lawyers from all over the world who also practice the same kind of law, also intellectual property. And they would complain about the US lawyers and not knowing what to charge their clients, or at least quoting their clients in advance. And so I had come up with this system of flat rate billing, even for litigation, that's been working ever since, just kind of modifying as needed. And I think that piece puts at ease not just our international clients, but also our domestic ones. Turns out US clients also would like to know in advance what they're going to be charged. I think that's one thing that separates us. I think the other is that we do a lot of giving back. We give scholarships in the innovative sciences. We are involved in the community. And so I do think that has been noticed. I did get a call from a client, at least one, who said, well, I've been looking for an IP attorney. It was in the patent space, which we also handle. And he said, I love what you're doing. We have a portion of our website dedicated to giving back. And so we try to keep up with that, with the things that we're doing to give back.
Why is that important to you and to your firm?
I feel like it really is the essence of who we are as people. So as lawyers, we are servicing clients. We are providing a service. We're helping people. But there are other areas, other passions that we have in our life. For example, it's an extension of intellectual property. So for Hebrew University, which is one of the top science universities in the world, it's located in Jerusalem, Israel, and we give a master's scholarship specifically in innovative sciences.
Wow.
I attended that university as a one-year abroad student back in university. So I have a connection to the university and really support what they're doing. They're really, it's a real humanitarian effort going on there.
Wow. Amazing. That's incredible. So how and when did you know that you wanted to become an attorney? Well, you came from a legal family, I guess.
So my father used to say that he would home grow his attorneys because my sister is also an attorney. There's three of us. The middle child decided not to go into law, as middle children do. But both my sister and I joined the practice that my father had founded. And we just kind of grew up knowing about the law, spending time in the office. I used to organize various things, for extra cash growing up. And then in college, I was proofreading patents for a summer. So the environment was familiar to me. I also loved to travel. I had that bug early on in life, and I've lived in several different places, always coming back to Chicago. But I love travel, and I still do. And I recall my father traveling for conferences and for cases and things of that nature. And I thought, well, the connecting, the passion for travel with the passion for intellectual property, and of course the job component, right, to help fund something that you love to do, seemed like a good connection.
What makes intellectual property law appealing to you?
Wow. Well, it's probably changed over the years. In the beginning, I just thought it was so neat to be in court. I loved litigation. I was even in law school on what was called a 7-Eleven license, meaning that I had a supervisor. I was still in school, but they actually let me do direct and cross examinations for more minor things like traffic violations. And I just thought that the energy in the courtroom, it just felt so real. And I just really enjoyed that. Then, in the practice of law, you're not doing that all the time. There's trial lawyers and there's litigators, and you learn early on the difference that, it can take years, certainly in IP cases, to even get to that point. But I really like the camaraderie and the teamwork between the associates and the partners, and the experience from even before you file a complaint, just what goes on through the life of a case, and it may not get to the end. Settlement, negotiating, and licensing also became a strength of mine, and we still do a lot of that today. So I would say all the various pieces. because we also do prosecution work, the registration side with the government, that helped, and having a litigation background, that helped kind of set up prosecution, like where we see, be careful of how we word this, right? Or what claims we make here, because that could affect us later. So I kind of like also having that, the strategy hat on, the strategy brain, to use what we know across the disciplines.
You are actually, how did you then get started in the legal industry? You went to law school. What happened from there?
So yeah, I went to law school and I did that 711 license. And once I finished, when I finished that program and I started working, I immediately started at Welsh and Katz. We had a small class of associates, and I worked my way up. And after about 6 years, I was voted into partnership there. And then about 4 or 5 years later, we merged into the big general firm. And then several years after that, then I started my own firm, kind of back. We're not as large as what Welsh and Katz was, but we have like a lean and mean team, small boutique firm specialized in IP.
So you'd already had experience as a partner and things like that. What were the early days of, launching your own firm, as kind of your own? What were those days like?
It's so funny because it's a blur when one day just goes into the next. But one of the reasons why I wanted to start my own firm was to have a little bit more autonomy. I was nursing I had a third child, right? And so the idea of every January, your billable hours tickering back to zero was like painful for me. And I thought, you know what, there has to be a different way to do this. And sure enough, after some time, putting together, my strategy for my own firm, which I did start with Richard Gurak, my partner, who I worked with already many years in the prior firms, both firms, the merged and the pre-merged firm. And the timing was right. A lot of that is timing was right. And I wanted to be able to be present a little bit more. This is, of course, before hybrid. This is when you were going to work every day. We had hybrid before hybrid was a thing. Back in 2012, people weren't talking about, maybe they called it like telecommuting or something like that. And we weren't that either, really. And so we had a downtown office, and we had also, across from the Sears, we're right across from the Sears Tower. And then we have also the ability to work from home, to sit at our desk that looks just basically works functionality and all of that stuff, just as we would if we were downtown. And then, we also had downtown space to be, that downtown working lawyer. And the first day we opened, March 27th of 2012, one of my kids had a spring concert at school. Well, guess what? I work from home on my very first day of Advitam IP, and I popped over. We live in the neighborhood of the school. So I popped over for an hour to catch the concert and came home. I mean, that wasn't stuff that I could actually realistically do prior.
Sure. Was there anything that was like, I don't know. I mean, you'd already been a partner, that was kind of like surprising, or, oh, I didn't learn this in law school type thing?
Oh, sure. Everything is on you. Like, you have a tech problem. Don't think you can call your tech guy at the office. Okay. No, you have to figure out a different way of handling the different issues that come up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're starting out, you don't have a salaried person to just handle things for you. I mean, you can't call your guy and then he comes by, and you kind of go for lunch while he's working on computer. You come back and voila, everything's fixed. It doesn't work. It's the same with, with a lot of things. In marketing, you end up wearing a lot of hats, and there's a lot of learning curve in the beginning. And eventually, as we've become more successful, we've been able to bring on staff in various capacities for what we've needed. Yeah.
So now that you've done it for I think more than a decade, right? 2012 is when you guys launched.
Mhm.
What would you
Yes.
say is maybe a key to running a thriving and successful firm like that?
Well, you definitely have to be able to keep your cool.
Sure.
You have to like take a deep breath and just be able to think problem solving. Okay. How can I best and efficiently and effectively move on from this issue? Because you have to get through, there's vital things that go on in running a firm, and you still have your deadlines. You still have these things. And so you've got a lot of balls in the air sometimes, right?
Hmm.
So being able to manage and being able to be like, you know what, pin in that for now, got to move to this, the ability to be fluid in your day. I
I'm
mean, being
guess.
a mom to some extent kind of kind of trained me for that.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Um, I'm sure you also have to keep your cool in the courtroom as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't, are you a litigator,
I am not.
Chad? I
No,
don't know.
I'm just a
Oh,
interviewer
okay.
on
So
podcasts.
okay, well, so from the standpoint of yes, you've got a lot of eyes on you, right? And you're in
Hmm.
the courtroom. There's probably a minimum of 8 things going on at any given time. And so yes, you have to be able to take that deep breath and just kind of splice out and prioritize what are we going to handle or respond to first, then what's next and next and next and next until you walk out of there.
I'm sure for like an aspiring attorney, working in a courtroom is probably like a romantic thing. You know, you see that on TV and things like that. When you had your first courtroom experience, what were you feeling going into it? Were you like ready and prepared? Were you nervous because the maybe the other attorney wasn't a first timer? What were you thinking?
I was nervous. I was nervous. It's like they say, see one, do one.
Hmm.
So you kind of go in just as like a shadow. You may introduce yourself, so you get to speak on the record, which I think is just a nice little appetizer, so to speak. Just like softens the introduction. And then when you go in on your own, and it also depends whether you're in state or federal court, you got to be prepared. And it's difficult because a lot of times you go in and you're trying a case, you're arguing something, but it's not what you prepared for. Something else will come up, maybe unexpected. You can only prepare so much. So you have to kind of be used to going in, not knowing you don't know what's going to happen. And in state court, at least here in Cook County in Chicago, you have to handwrite your orders on carbon paper. That's pretty shocking for federal attorneys. And
Hmm.
we do both, we find ourselves in both systems. So I always would bring one with me. I always brought one with me from a prior case or from earlier in the case. So I'd at least have like the initial language, right? And you've got to grab your carbon pieces in the duplicative copies, and then you start writing. So there's little like tricks like that to kind of help be prepared, that sort of thing. And that was kind of one of the little tricks that I started doing just because I thought, oh, before going to state court, oh, don't forget an order.
Sure, great. Yeah, sounds good. Hey, I have one more question for you, but tell me first how people can find out more about Advitam IP Attorneys at Law.
Sure, absolutely. So we have a website. It's www.advitamip.com, advitamip.com. And that's probably it has our emails there, where we're located, and background information about us, testimonials, case summaries. So you can learn a lot about us there.
And it's plus1adoption.org. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Hey, last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned in your intro that you are an international podcaster. Tell me about that. How did you get into that? What's that all about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so gosh, this was back in 2019. I got a cold call, which is interesting because I usually screen those. And but I ended up talking to this a lovely voice from the UK who was starting a magazine called Women's IP World. And she asked me if I would be the US contributor. So when they started, they were only taking writers. It was like a non-compete type of magazine. So they'd have a US rep and then from all various other countries around the world. And I said, wow, that's wonderful. I'm interested. So fast forward, I contributed a couple years, then the pandemic hits, and the editor called me and asked me, Michele, I'm going to ask you this question. I know you're going to say no. That's how he asked me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want to start a podcast and I think you'd be great as the host. Would you consider it? And I said, well, like, what's the time commitment, right? That's, as a busy person, even during COVID, I had four kids at home. So I was intrigued and I accepted. And now we're in the third season of the Women's IP World podcast.
Wow. So you interview other IP attorneys or what's kind
I
of the
do.
format?
Yes. Mm-hmm. The format, our guests consist of the authors. So we can do a deep dive into the articles, the research, whatever it is that they are writing about. And it's something I really enjoy doing and getting to know these people. And certainly during COVID, when I wasn't, going to international meetings and that sort of thing, it was a really nice touch point to, I suppose, to promote the firm. Is part of it, but also to really make connections. And now that we're back in person, I'm now seeing people in the flesh for the first time after I've been speaking with them virtually for a few years.
Yeah, a lot of people think podcasting is just kind of about marketing and getting your name out there, but it really helps with connections, like you said, with the interviews that you have on the podcast. Hey, Michele, it's been great to talk to you.
Subject matter is.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say, and the topics are mostly they're IP related, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're industry. It's industry specific, but also there's this side about women's issues that have transcend not just the IP or legal, but kind of just transcend globally. As and there's been a lot of writing and whatnot through through COVID about how women have been affected by lockdowns.
How can people find it?
Good question. There's also a website for the magazine, and it's womensipworld.com. Womensipworld.com.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Michele, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for all of your time and your stories and your insights. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.